If you're planning to retire at 67 and live comfortably on the age pension, you need to hear this. Something major has just been revealed, and it's going to change everything for millions of Australians. What we've all believed about retirement for decades is being completely turned upside down, and if you don't know what's coming, you could be in for a very rude awakening. Welcome back to Centerlink Alert, where we break down the changes that actually matter to your wallet and your future. Today, we're talking about the truth the government has finally admitted about retirement in Australia. And trust me, this is not what you want to hear, but it's absolutely what you need to know. For as long as most of us can remember, the deal was simple. You work hard, you pay your taxes, you contribute to society for decades, and when you hit 65 or later 67, you retire. You get your age pension, and you enjoy the rest of your life. That was the promise. That was the social contract. But here's the bombshell. That promise is crumbling right before our eyes. The government has now openly acknowledged what experts have been warning about for years. The entire retirement system is being recalibrated. We're talking about new economic realities, longer life expectancies, and the skyrocketing cost of living. All of these factors are forcing a complete rethink of how retirement works in this country. And if you're in your 50s or 60s right now, or even your 40s, this is going to affect you directly. Let me be clear about what's happening. The age pension system that we've relied on for generations is no longer the safety net it used to be. The magic number of 67 that everyone has been planning around, it's not guaranteed anymore. It's not the finish line we thought it was. Government officials have recently come out and said it plainly. Expectations around retirement must change. They've admitted that Australians are living longer than ever, which is fantastic. But the economy and the tax system simply can't keep up with the cost of funding these longer retirements. So what's the message? The nation needs to prepare for a future where people work longer, save more, and depend far less on government support. Now, economists saw this coming, but for everyday Australians, for families across the country, this has sent shockwaves. It feels like the goalposts keep getting moved. Not that long ago, the pension age was 65. Then it went to 66, then 67. And people accepted it. They understood the demographic realities. But now, even 67 might not be the end of it. Some analysts are already suggesting that the next generation of retirees could be looking at a pension age of 70 or even higher. Think about that for a moment. If you're 50 right now, you might not be retiring until you're 70 or beyond. That's a massive shift from what we were all told growing up. Let's take a quick step back and look at how we got here. The age pension was established in Australia more than a century ago. It was built on a simple, beautiful promise. If you contribute to society throughout your working life, the government will support you in your old age. For decades, that promise held strong. The pension provided a modest but reliable income to millions of older Australians. But the fundamental math behind the system has changed dramatically. Back in the 1970s, there were roughly 7 working-age Australians for every person over 65. Today, that ratio has dropped to about 4 workers for every retiree. And here's the scary part. In the next 20 years, it's expected to fall below 3. That means fewer and fewer taxpayers are supporting more and more retirees. The financial pressure on the national budget has become impossible to ignore. The cost of pensions, healthcare, and aged care is growing much faster than tax revenue can keep up with. So the government has already made changes. They raised the pension age from 65 to 67. They made eligibility tests stricter. They made superannuation contributions mandatory for all employees to push people toward self-funded retirement. But apparently, even all of that isn't enough. The government is now signaling loud and clear that Australians need to completely rethink what retirement means. The new approach puts much more weight on personal responsibility. Instead of relying mainly on the age pension, future retirees are being told to build up stronger super balances, manage their savings carefully, and seriously consider working longer if they can. In other words, the government is saying, "We'll help you, but only if you help yourself first." For years, turning 67 meant you were automatically eligible for the pension. But that's changing. Pension eligibility now depends on a whole mix of factors, not just your age. We're talking about your income, your assets, your residency status, and even your work history. If you have significant savings, investments, or a decent super balance, you might find that your pension payments are reduced or even completely denied under the means test. If you own a valuable property, you might also get smaller benefits. Essentially, the pension is being transformed from something most people expected to receive into a targeted welfare payment for those who really need it. Now, the government argues this is about fairness and sustainability. They say people who can support themselves should do so, freeing up funds for those who genuinely need help. And on paper, that sounds reasonable. But for many middle-income Australians who've worked hard their entire lives, this feels like a broken promise. The psychological impact of this shift can't be overstated. For countless Australians in their late 50s and early 60s, the idea of working past 67 feels absolutely daunting. Many are already dealing with health issues, age discrimination at work, or just plain exhaustion from decades in the workforce. They structured their entire lives around the idea of retiring at 67, and now that foundation is crumbling beneath them. Let's talk about the economics driving all of this. Australia's population is aging rapidly. Life expectancy has shot up dramatically. Someone who retired at 65 back in the 1960s might have lived another 10 or 15 years on average. Today, it's completely normal for Australians to live well into their 80s or 90s. That means retirees are now spending 2 or 3 decades in retirement, drawing on savings and pensions far longer than anyone anticipated. And at the same time, the cost of living has gone through the roof. Housing, healthcare, groceries, utilities, all of these things consume a much bigger chunk of a retiree's budget than they used to. The government's updated position reflects all of these challenges. Officials have explained that the system has to remain fair to both current retirees and future generations. One of the biggest cultural shifts we're seeing is the rise of what's being called the working retiree. In the past, retirement meant a clean break from work. Today, that line is getting blurrier. More Australians are continuing to work well into their late 60s and even their 70s, and it's not always just out of necessity. Many older Australians today are healthier and more active than previous generations. They want to stay engaged and maintain a sense of purpose. The government has even introduced incentives to encourage this. The message is crystal clear. Retirement doesn't have to mean stopping work entirely. In fact, working longer might actually be the smartest financial move you can make. But here's the thing. This isn't an option for everyone. People in physically demanding jobs often can't just keep working indefinitely. Their bodies won't let them. For these Australians, the changes feel deeply unfair. I want you to hear some real voices here. One retired factory worker from Melbourne said, "I've worked since I was 16. My body can't handle another 5 years. We were told 67 was the deal, and now they want to move it again. It's just not fair." But others see it differently. A 61-year-old nurse from Sydney said, "People are living longer, and that's a good thing. We can't expect the government to pay for everyone to live another 30 years after retirement. As the age pension becomes harder to access, superannuation becomes more critical than ever." The government wants to shift the burden of retirement funding away from taxpayers and onto individual savings through the super system. But here's the problem. Despite decades of contributions, many Australians still reach retirement with insufficient balances. The government's latest analysis shows that the average super balance for women in their 60s is significantly lower than for men. This reflects years of pay inequality and career breaks. With all these changes happening, one thing is absolutely certain. Australians must take a far more proactive approach to retirement planning. The days of relying entirely on the government pension are over. Experts recommend starting early to assess your super growth and investment strategies. If you're in your 50s or 60s, you should seriously consider speaking to a financial advisor. So, what happens next? Government officials insist that there's no immediate legislation to raise the age beyond 67. But they also admit that discussions are ongoing. The message is crystal clear. Australians should expect more shifts as the economy evolves. Despite all the anxiety these changes are creating, there is also genuine reason for optimism. The transformation of retirement could actually empower Australians to live more active and financially independent lives. Technology and flexible work options mean people can remain productive much longer than previous generations. Here's the truth. The government is being honest about the massive pressures facing the system. Australians are being invited to take charge of their own retirement destiny, to plan smarter and save harder. Retirement is no longer a single date marked on the calendar. It's becoming a gradual, evolving stage of life. The era of retire at 67 and relax may be fading into history. But what replaces it could actually be something more sustainable. A retirement built not just on government entitlement, but on personal empowerment and smart planning. So here's my final message to everyone watching. The truth about the new age pension rules isn't just a warning, it's a wake-up call. Take control now. Understand your super, talk to financial advisors, and build a retirement strategy that doesn't depend entirely on government support. If this video opened your eyes to what's really happening, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Here at Centerlink Alert, we're committed to breaking down the changes that matter to your financial future. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.